Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I've decided to shed some light on a very recent case that was decided here in Australia, specifically in Sydney. It's not a secret that the justice system is unfortunately very draconian in its views, and that can make it out to be quite sexist in the sense that women are viewed as harmless and low-risk offenders. So the case involves a 33-year-old woman by the name of Melissa Nosty. And back in 2010, when she was a school attendance officer, she sexually assaulted a 15-year-old boy who went to that school. Notice how I changed the wording used in the title. Because in the title it says she had sex with this boy, when in reality, she sexually assaulted him. Children under the age of 16 in Australia and Sydney are incapable of providing consent, which automatically makes the sexual incident an incident of assault, a crime. You can only be said to have sex with someone if you've done it willingly. We need to start labeling these things as they should be, because that's how things are treated when it's a male perpetrator. So this 33-year-old woman was sentenced to 18 months with a 6-month non-parole period after pleading guilty. And as if that isn't bad enough, because 18 months is nothing, and we will look into the actual crime in the relevant legislation and the maximum sentence that is applicable to this crime. In late October this year, she was granted bail after only spending about a week in jail after being sentenced. Her lawyer argued that the court should release her because she is at low risk of having sex with a teen student again. So apparently the court was compelled to release her after her attorney produced a doctor's note that deemed her unlikely to re-offend. There were certain conditions that were imposed on her bail, and these were imposed to reduce her risks to the community. She was ordered to possess one cell phone, hand over her password to the police whenever instructed, and ordered to not contact the teen student or anyone younger than the age of 16, and to remain at her address in the suburb of Ryde. Now, in response to comments from men, unfortunately, who say that these students are lucky and they wish that this had happened to them when they were students, and a slew of other comments in the same vein, I do have this to say. The judge did refer to a victim impact statement that was delivered to the court that was found to be compelling, and she believed that a threshold was crossed. A victim impact statement is a statement that has been made by the victim, being the teenage boy in this situation. Now, of course, it's been 10 years. He's around my age now. He's in his mid-20s. But the fact that the judge said it was compelling means that he was traumatized by this experience. So this notion of boys will be boys and he probably enjoyed it and he was so lucky needs to go out the window, because these boys were children. And I have a feeling that men who voice jealousy or who support this kind of behavior and wish that it happened to them have no idea what they're talking about, in the sense that it never happened to them. So they don't know what it's like to be a young boy, a 15-year-old child who is preyed upon by an adult predator. This is one of those cases where the victim has made it clear that they were traumatized or at least negatively impacted by the actions of the defendant. So before you decide to type, "that boy was lucky, I would have given anything to be him," please consider that. It is a very important step in addressing this situation and remedying this idea that society has that men always want it. Men are always up for it. Men can never say no. Because that immediately implies that men can never be victims of sexual abuse at the hands of a female, and everyone out there with half a brain knows that that is not true. All right, so I made reference to the fact that she was only sentenced to 18 months. The relevant crime that she committed can be found in Section 66C of the Crimes Act of New South Wales. And it directly pertains to sexual intercourse with a child between the age of 10 and 16. The relevant subsection here is subsection 4, a child between 14 and 16, which is an aggravated offense, which essentially means it's a worse version in layman's terms. Any person who has sexual intercourse with a child who is of or above the age of 14 and under the age of 16 in circumstances of aggravation is liable to imprisonment for 12 years. Subsection 5 defines circumstances of aggravation, and the one that pertains to this case is subsection D. The alleged victim is, whether generally or at the time of the commission of the offense, under the authority of the alleged offender. As I've mentioned, this woman worked as an attendance officer in a school. She was an adult who had a position of authority working in the same school that this child went to. So there was immediately an imbalance of power there, and she was the authority figure in that situation. So 12 years maximum, and she got 18 months. Which is why I really wanted to point out that, first of all, we should stop referring to this as having sex and refer to it as sexual assault. And secondly, her sentence was a joke to begin with, without this whole new update of her being released after only spending 1 week imprisoned. I don't like to make generalizations usually, but a male perpetrator, from the cases that I've been exposed to, I've never worked in these areas, but I've read a lot about this and I come across a lot of these cases, and usually male perpetrators are not treated as leniently. And that's the issue that I'm trying to bring attention to here. When a man sexually preys on a child in school, it is rarely treated with such leniency. And this is maybe the 3rd or 4th case that I have made a video on in my very short YouTube career, and these things just keep happening. And the only way to stop them from happening is to talk about them and to raise awareness so that the justice system can finally update its freaking code that it's stuck in. It's like some kind of medieval programming that we're stuck in the legal system, and finally understand and accept that women should be held just as liable and just as culpable as men. If women want equality, it must be imposed in all areas of life, good or bad. Not just in the workplace and equal pay, but also equal treatment and equal punishment. 10 years ago, this woman was 23 and the child was 15. I am only a handful of years older than 23, and I would never entertain the notion of looking at a young boy, a young teenager, let alone doing anything. So I'm mentioning this because she's been deemed to be a low-risk offender. But I highly question that, because the fact that you can entertain the notion of being sexually active with a child and pursuing that child is clearly an indication that you need help. And people don't like to use the word pedophile with women, and I don't know why, but she is a pedophile. There's no other way of looking at it. And in anticipation of arguments where he must have looked like an adult, or maybe he was just very developed for his age, he was a student in school, so there's no mistaking his age, especially when you know what grade he's in. People can usually determine the age of a child based on their grade in school. So I don't care how developed or mature or muscular or manly this boy looked, she knew he was a child. She had access to his files, presumably. She worked there. So there is no excuse. And I disagree with this notion of her being a low-risk offender, because I feel like, much like male pedophiles, this is a mental condition. It's not something that can just be turned on and off. These people tend to be attracted to children for their entire lives. That's it for this video. Just another way to advocate for equality in all areas, not just in the areas that women want to be treated equal. As always, don't forget to let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, and I will catch you in a future video.